Hello everyone, welcome to Arpita ki NCERT Kaksha. Today we are starting with chapter number 4, which is the alternative centers of power. Class 12 की NCERT Contemporary World Politics का chapter 4 आज हम start करने जा रहे हैं, which is alternative centers of power. Now in this chapter we are going to study how to counter US hegemony or US's predominance. There were different regional organizations which were established. कैसे कोल्ड वॉर के खत्म होने के बाद यूएस हेजेमनी अपनी स्प्रेड करने लगता है, ये तो हमने पढ़ लिया था. By chapter 3 we have studied how US started dominating, how US started spreading its hegemony. We understood the meaning of hegemony also. In this chapter we are going to understand how to counter US hegemony, to stop US from becoming more and more dominant in nature. There were alternative centers of economic and political power which were set up. For example, in Europe, we had European Union. In Asia, we had ASEAN, right? Then China also started, economically rising. So we are going to study all of that in this chapter. इस chapter में हम तीन बहुत ही major associations को पढ़ने जा रहे हैं. European Union, ASEAN and China. These three, they basically were created in chapter. Make sure that you are also noting down all these notes in your register. आप अपने register में notes बनाते जा रहे हैं, ये भी make sure कीजिएगा. So let's get started. शुरू करते हैं आज का हम lecture अपना. First we see European Union. We know that this particular map is of European Union. जितने भी आपके purplish हैं, ये हैं older members. और रेडिश जितने भी हैं वो है आपके ऑरेंजेस जितने भी हैं ये आपके दिखाते हैं न्यू मेंबर्स व्हिच हैव बीन एडेड टू द यूरोपियन यूनियन. So basically there are 27 countries which are a part of European Union and they basically operate as a economic and political bloc. That means all these countries are operating and working together in two spheres, both the economic and the political sphere. So after World War II, basically the rise of European nations started. World War II के बाद ना, the question was how European nations are going to act. Okay, how European nations are going to come together and make sure that in future nobody acts against them or nobody tries to harm them. European nations का ये मानना था कि World War II के बाद हमें integrate होना चाहिए. We have to come together so that in future this World War like situation should not erupt. It should not dominate us or destroy us. ऐसा ना हो कि फ्यूचर में फिर से कोई वर्ल्ड वॉर जैसी सिचुएशन आए और हमें करप्ट करे या डिवास्टेट करे. There was excessive devastation that this European continent had, undergone. For example, countries like Poland, countries like Bulgaria, Hungary, Spain. These countries underwent huge, Germany, devastation after World War II. So in order to protect its political situation and in order to protect its economic condition, the European Union was established. So basically you can say European Union. Union means when two things or more than two things come together and form one. ठीक है, when two things they become one, that is union. जब दो चीजों का मिलन होता है उसे यूनियन बोलते हैं. तो European Union basically is the union of all the European nations. Okay, and this European integration, that is coming together of all these European nations, it happened after 1945 and then again it happened after 1991. 1945 के बाद यूरोपियन कंट्रीज एकजुट होनी शुरू हुई और then 1991 के बाद वापस से when USSR disintegrated, again the European integration started. नए members add हुए यूरोपियन यूनियन में. न्यू member countries were added into the European Union after USSR disintegration. So in two stages, European countries basically came together after the World War and after the Cold War. These were the two wars which made these European countries understand and aware that we have to come together because in union lies the strength. एकता में ही शक्ति है, ताकत है, यूनियन में ही ताकत है. ये एहसास इनको एक 1945 में हुआ और दूसरी बार 1991 में. And again, here America also plays a great help. America extended very huge amount of financial help for reviving Europe's economy. So there was a plan which was known as the Marshall Plan. Who was George Marshall, on whose name the plan was framed? George Marshall was the US Secretary of State. So he created this Marshall Plan. So So this European recovery program, basically they were series of relief programs which started in 1948. Just now we discussed that in 1945 the European continents were hit economically after the US extended its financial help through the Marshall Plan. तो 1948 में इकोनॉमिक रिकवरी प्रोग्राम लॉन्च करते हैं जॉर्ज मार्शल, बेसिकली इकोनॉमिक हेल्प प्रोवाइड करने के लिए टू ऑल द यूरोपियन नेशंस व्हिच वर डेवास्टेटेड आफ्टर द वर्ल्ड वॉर II to help in the recovery and reconstruction of Western Europe. Under this Marshall Plan, there was OEEC which was established, Organization for European Economic Cooperation. So this is important for prelims also. All these facts that we are understanding, it's very important for you pre-2022. तो ये जो Organization for European Economic Cooperation है, it was established in which year? 1948. World War II से 3 साल बाद इस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को स्टैब्लिश किया जाता है. Why? So that help can be provided to those European states which have been devastated and damaged because of the World War II. All right. So this platform became, an area where all the Western European states used to cooperate in terms of trade and other economic issues. And then in 1949, the very next year, Council of Europe was established. This was another important platform for the political cooperation among the Western European states. Western European states आपस में politically, economically they were cooperating through this platform. Now to cooperate and coordinate politically also, to integrate politically also, this Council of Europe was established in 1949. And then in 1957 we had the European Economic Community. Now we have studied about EEC a lot of times in the Hindu newspaper or the Indian Express newspaper. हमने काफी बार ये पढ़ा है कि there are meetings which are conducted in the European Economic Community that was formed in 1957. Again, that is very important. How can you remember it? You can remember it in a way that after 10 years after our India's independence, European Economic Community was formed. 10 years after independence was 1957. 47 में independence मिला, 57 में EEC establish हो गया. That is how you have to create a single parameter through which you can remember the timelines. ओके एक सिंगल पैरामीटर ले लो 1947, उसके आगे और पीछे की ईयर्स आपको फिर याद रखने हैं एस्टैब्लिशमेंट के. एंड दिस यूरोपियन इकोनॉमिक कम्युनिटी लेड टू द एस्टैब्लिशमेंट एंड क्रिएशन ऑफ यूरोपियन पार्लियामेंट. And we know that Soviet bloc, that is the USSR, it collapsed in 1991. That is why European Union, basically it was, a decision was made in the European Parliament that after Soviet Union, it disintegrated. In 1992, we are going to establish European Union. तो जैसे ही सोवियत यूनियन डिसइंटीग्रेट होता है, टूटता है यूएसएसआर, तो ये यूरोपियन पार्लियामेंट में डिसीजन लिया जाता है कि 1992 में अगले ही साल अब हम यहाँ पर अपना यूरोपियन यूनियन स्टैब्लिश करेंगे. एंड दैट इज हाउ यूरोपियन यूनियन केम इनटू एग्जिस्टेंस. यूरोपियन यूनियन हैज इट्स ओन फ्लैग, इट हैज इट्स ओन एंथम, देयर इज अ फाउंडिंग डेट 1992 एंड इट हैज इट्स ओन करेंसी. यूरो इसकी अपनी करेंसी भी है. ओके तो इसका खुद का फ्लैग है, नेशनल एंथम है इसकी और यूरोपियन करेंसी भी है इसकी. बट वन फैक्ट दैट यू हैव टू रिमेंबर इज इट डज नॉट हैव इट्स ओन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. अभी इसका खुद का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन नहीं है. इट हैज नॉट बीन अलाउड बाय अदर नेशंस ओके टू फॉर द यूरोपियन यूनियन टू हैव इट्स ओन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. So right now it has its flag, anthem and its currency because not all the members of European Union are ready to form a constitution. Okay, only few members are insisting कि भैया हमारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन होना चाहिए, बट कुछ नेशंस अभी नहीं मान रहे हैं इस बात को. एंड यूरोपियन यूनियन ना, इट इज एज बिग एज यूएस. इट हैज इट्स ओन इकोनॉमिक, पॉलिटिकल, डिप्लोमेटिक एंड मिलिट्री इन्फ्लुएंस. इट हैज द वर्ल्ड सेकंड बिग जीडीपी 2016 में देखा गया था लास्ट, तो $17 ट्रिलियन था. यूएस से काफी ज्यादा. तो ये यूएस से भी ज्यादा डोमिनेंस रखता है यूरोपियन यूनियन. इट्स इन्फ्लुएंस इज वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग. बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग इन्फ्लुएंस है ग्लोबली इसका. दैट इज व्हाई हैविंग गुड रिलेशंस विद यूरोपियन यूनियन इज आल्सो ऑन द लिस्ट ऑफ इंडियाज एजेंडा. फॉरेन रिलेशंस में हमारे एजेंडा में लिस्ट में सबसे पहला ये भी है कि यूरोपियन यूनियन के साथ ना हमारा रिलेशन अच्छा होना चाहिए, बिकॉज द करेंसी यूरो इज एज स्ट्रॉन्ग एज द यूएस डॉलर. इट इवन कैन डोमिनेट यूएस डॉलर. Its economic power gives it the influence over its closest neighbors as well as in Asia and Africa. That is why the constitution, permission to form a constitution is not being given to European Union. वरना तो ये बहुत ही ज्यादा dominant हो जाएगी अगर इसका खुद का constitution हो गया. because it has both the political and diplomatic influence. Two members of European Union are Britain and France, which also have permanent seats in USC. That is why UNSC यानी कि UN कोई भी डिसीजन लेता है उसमें ब्रिटेन और फ्रांस का यानी कि यूरोपियन यूनियन का इन्फ्लुएंस काफी स्ट्रॉन्ग रहता है. So it is even shaping and reshaping the policies of US. How? By having great influence in UNSC. यूरोपियन यूनियन के ही दो मेंबर्स ब्रिटेन फ्रांस यहाँ पर परमानेंट सीट लेके बैठे हैं UNSC में. ये UN बॉडी है. तो UN यानी कि US के डिसीजन में मेजर इन्फ्लुएंस EU का भी है. So from this only you can gather how strong European Union, how powerful European Union is. Military of European Union. अगर militarily हम if we see the militarily European Union's combined armed forces are the second largest in the world. और ये कोई छोटी मोटी बात नहीं है. It is very easy to read it, but it's very very grand when you see it on the field. पढ़ के तो इतना impactful नहीं लगता, पर जब फील्ड में देखोगे तो आपको दिखेगा कि मिलिट्री इन्फ्लुएंस यूरोपियन यूनियन का कितना स्ट्रॉन्ग और कितना सुपर पावरफुल है. It is a supranational organization. It can intervene in economic issues, political areas, social issues also. But still, in some parts of Europe, there are criticism है कि भाई यूरोपियन यूनियन कुछ ज्यादा ही डोमिनेंट ना हो जाए. It has to be kept in limit. Balance has to be maintained. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि कोई एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इतनी डोमिनेंट हो जाए कि वो बाकी वर्ल्ड फोर्सेस पे अटैक करने लगे. Right? So the question here is, what makes the European Union a highly influential regional organization? This is the question taken from NCERT only. Back question है कि यूरोपियन यूनियन को highly influential regional organization क्या चीज बनाती है? So start with the body itself. आप मेजर जो क्वेश्चन में डिमांड किया गया है बिल्कुल उसी से स्टार्ट नहीं करेंगे. आप कम से कम 3 से 4 लाइन का इंट्रोडक्शन देंगे. Regional organization, what is it? Regional organizations are a subcategory of international organization. There are international organizations like United Nations. So there are subcategories of international organization which are known as regional organization. This is international organization. Then we have different regional organizations. Okay, they can be financial also, non-financial also, IMF, World Bank, European Union, ASEAN, okay, SAARC. So all these are regional organizations. They consist of those supranational institutions whose members are governments or monetary authorities. That is why I gave you the example of IMF. The monetary authorities in a World Bank, IMF. तो regional organization वो supranational institutions हैं, वो institutions हैं इनकी या तो government या जिनके जो members हैं या तो वो government है किसी country के या फिर वो monetary authorities हैं of economies. Okay, so main objective of regional organization is so that the countries in a particular region can mutually cooperate with each other. ताकि उस region की countries एक दूसरे के साथ politically, economically collaborate कर सके, cooperate कर सके. They can solve conflicts peacefully. Okay, they can protect each other's territories and boundaries and cultural interest as well. That is why regional organizations are established. European Union, we know it has emerged as a powerful and influential regional organization because it has its own flag, it has its own anthem, currency. And why is it so? Because EU is the world's largest economy. Why it is influential? Because ये बहुत largest economy है. As in comparison with US, इसका जो GDP as calculated in 2016 was over $17 trillion. तो यहाँ पर आप factual information लेंगे to prove how European Union is influential economically. Then politically also it is very influential because two of its major members, Britain and France, have a permanent seat in the UNSC. So they are influencing United Nations decision also. So they have political influence also. Then यहाँ पर हम देखेंगे they have military influence. Combined forces of European Union, they are second largest in the world. Powers भी हैं. So this regional organization of European Union now, it is very powerful in terms of nuclear power and in terms of space and technology. Okay, that is what makes European Union very influential and highly powerful. Then we come to ASEAN. ASEAN, what is it? It is the Association of the Asian Nations, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It's a regional organization. Why? Obviously, the reason is simple. Regional organizations are established so that the countries of a particular region can politically and socially collaborate and cooperate with each other. They can solve their conflicts peacefully. They can merge, in terms of space research and scientific research. That is why the regional organizations are established. Okay, तो यहाँ पर एशियन नेशंस ना अपने टेरिटरीज को प्रोटेक्ट कर सके, एक दूसरे के साथ पीसफुली कोऑपरेट कर सके, इस वजह से आसियान बनाया गया. Now let's say you are in class 12th. Okay, you are in class 12th. Now in class 12th also there are several sections, right? My section was section E. There are section A, section D, section B and section C. Right? ये different sections होते हैं एक class के. So let's suppose this is the entire world. Okay, and this entire world is divided into different countries. Now these countries can come together. For example, let's say section A and section E are on the same floor. That is the second floor. So these two sections will be friendly with each other. They will form a union. Lunch breaks mein they will come together, meet, play, eat together, etc. Section B and section C are on the first floor, let's say. So these two sections will create one group, one community, so that they can eat together, play together, gossip together. And section B, यहाँ पर let's say यहाँ पर section F भी है. Section B and section F, they are on the third floor. So here section B and F naturally they will create one common community together. That is the role of regional organizations. तो यहाँ पर क्या होता है, जो एक साथ एक रीजन में कंट्रीज पढ़ती हैं, वो कंट्रीज एक साथ एक कम्युनिटी बना लेती है ताकि एक दूसरे से इंटरैक्ट कर सके, बिकॉज देयर कल्चर, देयर सोसाइटी इज समवॉट सिमिलर. ओके, so they understand each other, so they create a society, they create an organization of their own, so that no external power can dominate them or misuse them. Understood? Just take the example of your classes and your sections and your floors on which different sections were there, and compare it with these regional organizations. बहुत easy है, बहुत simple है, बस आपको आपकी life के साथ compare करना है, because all of these leaders of these countries are also humans. Okay, तो बहुत समझना easy है कि ये क्यों एक साथ आ रहे हैं. Okay, now the member nations are Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Brunei, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar and Cambodia. And the Secretariat of ASEAN is in Jakarta, which is in Indonesia. And do you know 8th August every year is celebrated? Now we have to go over the timeline. 1990s में ना the membership doubled. Okay, ASEAN का membership it doubled. The member countries joining ASEAN increased after the Vietnam War in 1975 and after the end of Cold War in 1991. So which countries joined ASEAN? Vietnam joined ASEAN, Brunei joined ASEAN, Laos, Myanmar and Cambodia. These countries joined ASEAN. तो यहाँ पर आप देख सकते हो we have all the member countries of ASEAN. Now 1995 में ना members of ASEAN signed a deal to create a nuclear free zone. So again they were focusing on a peaceful resolution of all the future conflicts and a peaceful environment for the citizens of all the nations by signing this nuclear free zone in Southeast Asia. 1997 में ASEAN Vision 2020 was adopted. Now what is this ASEAN Vision? देखो ASEAN, when any organization grows rapidly ना, they finally they come together at one conclusion how we are going to peacefully live together and integrate together. जब membership बढ़ जाती है ना एक organization बढ़ने लगती है, तो उसको एक रखने के लिए to maintain the unity in the organization, there is a vision that is adopted so that all the nations can grow together through that vision. This vision of ASEAN has different components. This vision was adopted in Kuala Lumpur in 1997. The vision consisted of 4 components. First was that by 2020, the member states they pledged to make ASEAN region a zone of peace. ये जो पूरा ASEAN region है 2020 तक हम इसको एक peaceful region में convert करेंगे. ये vision number 1 था. Second vision was to strive for peace and stability in Southeast Asian region. Again, we have to make sure that no matter how much conflicts are there, we need to strive and fight for the peace. हमें peace के लिए ही लड़ना है. We are not believing in the force of violence or dominance. We are here to work together, grow together and stabilize the entire region. एंड थर्ड कंपोनेंट वाज टू मेक साउथ ईस्ट एशियन रीजन अ न्यूक्लियर फ्री जोन. हम इस रीजन को एक न्यूक्लियर फ्री जोन बनाएंगे. हम न्यूक्लियर पावर है ठीक है, बट हम इसका यूज नहीं करने वाले. ओके, एंड टू बी कमिट्स ऑफ आसियान विजन 2020 which was adopted in 1997. ये इनका गोल था एक तरीके से. Alright, so ASEAN has three kinds of communities: political security community, economic community, and socio-cultural community. Alright, so here are your two homework questions. The peace and prosperity of countries lay in the establishment and strengthening of regional economic organizations. Justify the statement. किसी भी country की peace और उसकी बरकत उसके रीजनल इकोनॉमिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को स्ट्रांगली स्टैब्लिश करने में आती है. यानी कि अगर आपको कंट्री को पीसफुल बनाना है और प्रॉस्पर कराना है तो उसके रीजनल इकोनॉमिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को आर द स्टेटमेंट बाय गिविंग एग्जांपल्स. क्वेश्चन नंबर 2, व्हाट आर द कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ आसियान विजन 2020? अगेन वेरी इजी क्वेश्चन, हमने जस्ट अभी डिस्कस किया है आसियान का विजन क्या है. Coming on to the third very important topic, which is the rise of the Chinese economy. We know that we have so far studied the first alternative power of center, that is European Union. Second alternative center of power, that is ASEAN. Third was Chinese economy. Now, if you think that after 1991 USSR's disintegration, only ASEAN, that is the Asian nations and European nations came together, that is wrong. Even the China, it used this opportunity to expand its economy, to raise its economy. So it emerged out that so when we look at the aspects of China's economic rise, we have to go back to 1979. Before 1979, China's economy was a command economy. That is, everything was centrally planned. Why? So that there can be rapid industrialization in China. So that, there can be rapid economic rise in China. Here, the central government of China, it took, basically large scale investments to raise the economic progress of China. Private enterprises, foreign invested firms were restricted, they were barred. The central government's control was much higher. Foreign trade were also limited to obtaining those goods that could not be obtained in China. सिर्फ वही गुड्स बाहर से ऑब्टेन किए जाते थे जो चाइना में नहीं है, जो चाइना में अंदर से नहीं बनते हैं. So foreign trade was limited, private enterprises were limited. And all of this basically created distortions in the economy. इस तरीके की पॉलिसीज से ना इकोनॉमी धीरे धीरे नीचे आने लगी. So in 1978, Chinese government decided to break this kind of Soviet style economic policy. So from 1978, we saw reformations in China's economy. First reform was then the economic control was also decentralized. It was given to various enterprises like provincial government, local governments, which were allowed to operate and compete on free market principles. तो यहाँ पर power को अब decentralize करना शुरू किया गया. Instead of centralizing the economy was getting decentralized in order to remove the trade barriers, encourage greater competition, and to attract foreign direct investment inflows also. And since the introduction of these economic reforms, China's economy has grown substantially faster than it was before 1979. Okay, then do you know that in 1990s China also joined the World Bank. 1990s में चाइना ने वर्ल्ड बैंक को भी ज्वाइन कर दिया. It joined the International Monetary Fund also and the Asian Development Bank as well. तो इन्होंने Asian Development Bank को भी ज्वाइन कर दिया. So that financial funding. तो ये थे चाइना के बेसिक इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म्स which resulted into the exponential growth of China's economy. Now, when we study China, we also have to understand how China and India's relationship has evolved. हमें ये भी समझना है यहाँ पर कि चाइना और इंडिया का रिलेशनशिप कैसा है. Now we know that India and China, individually if we say, they had great influence in the world. How can we say that? Because we saw the dynastic and monastic rule in China also, and we saw the rule of kingdoms and kings and empires in India also. India में भी हमने देखा है, there were different empires, the Mauryan Empire, the Gupta Empire. Even in China we have seen different monastic rules, dynastic rules. अलग-अलग dynasty हमने China की culture में भी पढ़ी है. So they were individually very great powers in Asia before this imperialism and colonialism started. ये colonialism start हुआ है ना, उससे पहले चाइना और इंडिया काफी महान powers थे एशिया में. Okay, and they had greater influence politically, culturally and economically. But this imperialism and this colonialism, no, it ruined everything. धीरे-धीरे it started dividing the nations also. So the regions where India and China were exercising their influence when there were monastic and imperialist, dynastic rules, those regions were limited. Basically they were separate from each other. That is why they rarely overlapped. जहाँ जहाँ इंडिया और चाइना का इन्फ्लुएंस हुआ करता था, जब राजा महाराजा होते थे, वो रीजन्स एक दूसरे से दूर थे, इसलिए ओवरलैपिंग नहीं होता था. दैट इज व्हाई इंडिया एंड चाइना बिफोर द इंपीरियलिज्म एंड कोलोनियलिज्म दे डिड नॉट नो मच अबाउट ईच अदर्स कल्चर. इसलिए इंडिया और चाइना को ना एक दूसरे के कल्चर के बारे में इतना कुछ पता नहीं था. यस, देयर वर चाइनीज ट्रैवलर्स व्हिच विजिटेड इंडिया, बट देन आल्सो देयर वर नॉट मच इंटरैक्शन बिटवीन इंडिया एंड चाइना. As a result, neither of the two countries were familiar with each other. But in the 20th century, after the imperialism ended, when these countries confronted each other, they had some difficulty in evolving as a foreign partners or evolving their own foreign policies to deal with each other. That is why we have seen territorial disputes between India and China since then. And independence के बाद आप देखोगे यहाँ पर दोनों ही nations के बीच में territorial differences रहे हैं. For example, the takeover of Tibet, Dalai Lama took refuge in India, and that is why India and China are at crossroads against each other. 1950 में चाइना ने टेक ओवर किया तिब्बत का, तो दलाई लामा वहां से आकर इंडिया में आके बस गए थे. इंडिया ने शरण दिया था दलाई लामा और उनके फॉलोअर्स को, और इस बात को चाइना ने अप्रिशिएट नहीं किया था. Okay, still now in McLeodganj we see, Dalai Lama is living here in India. China does not like it. China को ये बात पसंद नहीं है कि दलाई लामा को हमने यहाँ पर रखा हुआ है अपने पास. Then Aksai Chin को लेकर जो लद्दाख रीजन में China basically says Aksai Chin is a part of us, and it also basically says that Arunachal Pradesh is part of our territory. हम इन दोनों ही claims को refute करते हैं. We do not accept these claims. तो यहाँ पर ये फाइट अभी यहाँ पर चल रही है. दिस इज नॉट माई, इट इज अक्सर. ओके, प्रिंट एरर है. And then Rajiv, देखो, the different leaders on both sides have also tried to lessen these disputes. दोनों साइड के जो लीडर्स हैं उन्होंने कोशिश की कि इन लड़ाइयों को, झगड़ों को खत्म कर सकें. Even Rajiv Gandhi's visit to China in December 1988 acted as an impetus, a boost for improvement in Indo-China relations. Okay, and then there is G20 summit going on, and right, हमने देखा था अभी Hindu News Analysis में we have studied that at PP15 there were troops, both from Indian troops and Chinese troops, which were engaged. But now because of G20 summit, both troops have disengaged from this area. So these are the basically examples that proves that yes, if we work together in this on our relation, Indo-China relation. So what are the major issues between India and China? First is the issue related to border dispute. Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin. यहाँ पर इसको please correct कर लीजिए. This is Aksai Chin. Then we know that Masood Azhar, who's the founder and leader of Jaish-e-Mohammed, also involved in 26/11 attacks in India. Basically, India is trying to blacklist Masood Azhar on the UN list. UN list में हम इसको blacklist करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, but again our efforts are being stopped by China. So China basically is befriending Pakistan over here. This is the major issue between India and China. China is also opposing India's entry into the nuclear supply group. Then Dalai Lama को लेकर China is upset with India that we are giving refugee to Dalai Lama, and Tibet का issue we are not in favor of China, and okay we are supporting Dalai Lama and his thoughts. And then Indian Ocean dispute, ये तो सिर्फ इंडिया और चाइना के बीच में, ये सारी इंडियन ओशन रीजन की कंट्रीज के बीच में और चाइना के बीच में डिस्प्यूट चल रहा है. Okay, so these are the major tensions. So how can we solve the problems between India and China? First, we have to look into the disputed border. Okay, we have to clarify. The first step to solving India and China's issue, this border related issue, is to clarify the exact definition of line of actual control between India and China, through which we can also mark the actual territories and boundaries between India and China. Second, both sides need to urgently revitalize their peacekeeping mechanisms on the border. We have to build up such memorandums and such agreements so that we can build confidence building measures. We can strengthen our confidence on each other. Third, India and China need to resolve their problems on the economic front because the potential for their relationship is very high. ठीक है, हमारा जो पोटेंशियल है ना चाइनीज मार्केट काफी बड़ा है. राइट नाउ वी हैव मेनी इंडियन प्रोडक्ट्स आर ब्लॉक्ड फ्रॉम द चाइनीज मार्केट. फॉर एग्जांपल द नॉन बासमती राइस, IT related products. China needs to open up its markets to Indian goods also. And fourth, way through which we can resolve India-China issues is both sides have to have a diplomatic mechanism so that they can discuss regional issues like Pakistan, terrorism, Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, etc. We can also build our own joint project in Afghanistan. Okay, so हमें ना यहाँ पर ये problems इस तरीके से I've given you 4 ways how India and China can resolve their problems. We can also, as a friend of Pakistan, an important military partner, India also feels that China should do more to restrain Pakistan instead of supporting and backing Pakistan. This is the fifth way how we can solve our relationship together. So these are the ways through which we can solve our relationship with China. Third homework question is identify the contentious issues between China and India and how could these be resolved for greater